The lone warrior falls. The sky was red. Smoke covered the land. Explosions shook the ground like thunder. Talleyrand stood in the middle of the battlefield, her hands shaking, her breathing heavy. She was covered in cuts and dust. Her armor was broken. Her weapon was almost empty. And she was the last one alive. Her people were gone. Her unit, her friends, even her commander, all destroyed. The enemy had come like a storm. No mercy, no break. Taylor had fought for 3 days without sleep. Her legs hurt. Her eyes burned. Her heart was tired, but she didn't give up. She stood tall, even when her knees wanted to fall. She was a warrior. She was born for this. Her people believed in her. And even if she had no one left, she would die standing. In the distance, the enemy soldiers marched forward. Tall, cruel, and cold. Their machines rolled across the land. Their weapons pointed at her. She was just one small figure against a whole army, but she didn't step back. She gripped her weapon tighter. One of the enemy commanders shouted something. In their rough language, the others laughed. Taylor didn't understand the words, but she understood the meaning. They were not afraid. They thought this would be easy. A quick finish. One last shot to end it all. Taylor raised her weapon, ready to take as many as she could with her. She whispered a silent goodbye to her family. Her body shook, not from fear, but from pain and hunger. This was it. The final moment. Then something happened. From the smoke behind her, footsteps echoed. Not heavy like the machines. Not loud like the enemy. Slow, calm, sure. She turned her head, confused. And there he was, a human, wearing dark armor, face calm, eyes focused. No fear in his walk. No weapon in his hands yet. He walked straight toward her like he belonged there. Like the fire and bullets didn't matter. Taylor blinked. Was this real? Was she dreaming? Why would a human be here? Her people and the humans had no alliance. They were not enemies, but they were not friends either. This battle had nothing to do with them. The human stopped a few steps away from her. He looked at her, not like an enemy, not like a threat. Just looked, calmly. You fought well, he said. His voice was soft but strong. She didn't understand the words, but his tone carried peace. Respect. Taylor lowered her weapon slightly, confused but still on guard. The enemy soldiers stopped too. They didn't expect this. Some shouted in anger. Some laughed again. They pointed at the human, ready to shoot him too. But the human didn't move. He reached slowly behind his back and pulled out his weapon. A strange-looking human rifle. It was large and heavy, yet he held it with ease. He turned, now facing the enemy beside Taylor. She realized something strange. He had no armor support, no backup, no army behind him. He had come alone, one man, in the middle of a war zone. And still, he looked like he had already won. Taylor didn't know who he was. She didn't know why he was here. But in that moment, something changed inside her. She was no longer alone. The enemy commander gave the order. The attack began again, but now the lone warrior wasn't just one. There were two. Taylor and the human stood side by side. The first shots came. The human was fast, too fast. His rifle lit up the sky. His aim was perfect. 3 enemies down before they even reached cover. Taylor joined him, firing with what little power she had left. She watched him as he fought, calm, sharp, like he had done this 1,000 times. She had never seen anyone like him. She was still tired, still weak. But his presence gave her strength. The enemy didn't expect this. Their plan was broken. Their easy win turned into a real fight. More enemies came, but Taylor and the human didn't fall. They covered each other, moved as one. And though they didn't speak the same words, they understood each other through action. After a while, the enemy pulled back to regroup. Silence returned for a short time. Talai looked at the human. He turned his head and gave her a small nod, as if to say, "We're not done yet." And for the first time in days, Talai felt hope. She was not alone anymore. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know where he came from, but he had walked through fire to stand beside her, and that meant everything. Asterisk. Shouldn't be here, but he, as Talleyrand, had seen many strange things in war, but nothing stranger than a human walking into her battle, alone. After the fight slowed and the enemy pulled back for now, her legs almost gave up. But she stayed standing because she had questions. The biggest one, why is this human here? She had never seen him before. He wore no symbols, no flag. His armor was dark and worn. His face was calm, but his eyes held fire. She couldn't ask him anything, not with words. Her language was different, but maybe his actions would give her answers. The human mason was not a soldier from her world. In fact, he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this planet. Earth had signed no deals with her people. They had no reason to get involved. But Mason had seen something from his orbiting ship, a signal, a broken cry for help, a distress beacon that most would ignore. Most. But not him, when others asked, "Why care about a war that isn't ours?" He answered, "Because someone is asking for help." He had gone against orders, left his team, took a small drop pod, came down into the middle of a battlefield. Everyone thought he was crazy. Maybe he was. But when he saw her standing alone, defending her people's last hope, he knew he had made the right choice. Back on the ground, Talai kept watching him. She didn't trust easily. But this man had no reason to lie, no reason to fight beside her. And yet, he did. That said more than words ever could. Suddenly, Mason pointed toward the east side of the battlefield. More enemy forces were moving quietly from the side. A sneak attack. Talai hadn't noticed. She cursed herself for missing it. But Mason had seen it first. He gave her a quick hand signal, showing a direction. She somehow understood it. Simple, clear, attack from behind. Cut the surprise short. Talai nodded once. She didn't know human tactics, but she followed. The two of them moved like shadows, slipping between broken vehicles and piles of ash. The enemy didn't expect them to attack first. When they reached the right spot, Mason raised his hand again, 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. Boom. He tossed a small device forward. It exploded into light and sound. The enemy squad shouted in shock. And before they could recover, Talai and Mason charged. 2 of them moved like they had trained together for years. He covered the right, she took the left, each one trusting the other without needing to speak. Bullets flew. Energy blasts lit up the dark air. The enemy panicked. They had never seen this kind of team before. Soon, the surprise attack was broken. The enemies ran back, leaving behind their wounded and their weapons. Talai and Mason stood victorious again. They returned to the small safe spot near a half-destroyed wall. Mason pulled out a small box and handed it to her. Inside were energy cells, ammo for her weapon. She looked at him, surprised. He had brought supplies for her? Why? Why would he care? He sat down and cleaned his rifle in silence, calm, like this was normal for him. Like fighting in someone else's war was just another day. Talai finally spoke in her native tongue, softly, more to herself than to him. "You don't belong here." Mason didn't understand the words, but maybe he understood the feeling. He looked up, and after a pause, he simply said, "I know." That one answer told her everything. He knew this wasn't his war. He knew this planet wasn't his home. And still, he chose to come. Talai had grown up believing no one would ever help. Her kind. They were not strong. Not rich, not important. They were a forgotten race fighting to stay alive. But this human, he saw something in her. He saw her fight. And he believed it was worth joining. She thought of her people. The ones who died believing help would never come. If only they could. See this now? A human? Choosing to fight beside an alien girl. For nothing in return. Night began to fall. The battlefield was quiet for now. But the war was far from over. Talai leaned against the wall, her body finally relaxing a little. She looked at Mason once more. He didn't speak, didn't explain. He just sat with her, checking his gear and watching the horizon. She had questions. So many questions, but maybe she didn't need answers right now. Maybe all that mattered was that she was no longer fighting alone, and that changed everything. Fighting side by side, the silence of the night did not last long. Distant sounds of machines hummed again. The enemy was coming back. This time, stronger and smarter, Talire stood up slowly. Her body still hurt, but her spirit was no longer broken. She was not alone anymore. She looked at the human Mason. He was all ready. Ready, his weapon checked. His eyes scanning the darkness. They didn't share the same language. They didn't share the same world. But somehow, they moved together like two halves of the same blade. Taylor motioned toward a broken building. It was higher ground, a better place to defend. Mason understood. No words needed. He gave a single nod and they both ran fast and low. Inside the building, the stairs had collapsed. But Mason didn't stop. He pushed a broken wall aside with raw strength, cleared a path, and helped Tale climb to the next floor. She had always fought alone, always relied on herself. But now, this human kept surprising her. He was careful but brave, quiet but fierce. They reached a corner where they could see the open field. Enemy troops were gathering again. But this time, they were spread out, using better formation. Talai narrowed her eyes. These weren't normal soldiers. These were trained. Elite, the kind sent to finish the job quickly. Talai prepared her rifle. Mason checked his gear. Then he did something strange. He took out a small screen. It showed a map, and on the map, red dots moved. Enemy signals. Talai was shocked. How did he get this? She whispered in her own language. She leaned closer, understanding the layout. The enemy was planning a wide sweep, hoping to trap them. She quickly pointed at a weak spot in their line. Mason looked where she pointed and smiled just a little. He understood. Without saying anything, he pulled out two small devices. He set one on the wall, then handed her the other. She looked confused at first, but then realized they were remote bombs. They would wait until the enemy moved past the traps. Then strike from behind. It was a bold plan. Dangerous. But it could work. As the enemy began to move in, the wind picked up. Dust rose into the air. Visibility dropped. It was the perfect moment. Taylor and Mason moved again, fast and silent, through broken metal and ashes, like ghosts. They reached a hidden spot where they could see the traps clearly. The enemy passed. By the bombs, unaware. Then dash boom. The traps exploded with bright fire. Screams followed. The enemy line broke for a moment. And that was enough. Talai and Mason jumped out, weapons ready. She covered high. He took low. Their timing was perfect. When she reloaded, he fired. When he ducked, she shot from above. Each one moving without needing to look at the other. The enemy tried to regroup. But they couldn't match the speed and precision of this strange team. An alien girl and a human warrior fighting like one. Mind. One soldier rushed toward Mason, too close. But Talai threw her blade and hit the enemy's leg. Mason turned, finished the job, and gave her a quick glance of thanks. In the middle of chaos. They were still in sync. The fight lasted minutes. but it felt like hours. When the last enemy fell, the field went quiet again. Talai was breathing hard. So was Mason. They looked at each other, tired but alive. She sat down on a stone and stared at him. "You don't speak my words," she said softly, "but you fight like one of us." Mason didn't respond, but he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver coin. On one side, it had the symbol of Earth. On the other, a scratched message. "One life saved is worth more than 1,000 battles won." He handed it to her. Talai took the coin, her fingers brushing against the metal. She didn't understand the full meaning, but she felt its weight. She looked at him again, really looked. This man had crossed galaxies, disobeyed his leaders, risked his life. For her, not because of duty, but because he believed it was the right thing to do. She closed her hand around the coin. Maybe fate had brought him here. Maybe she wasn't the only one tired of fighting alone. Maybe this was the beginning of something bigger. Far away. Another explosion echoed. They both turned, weapons ready once more. The battle wasn't over. But now, they were ready. Together. The secret they discover. The battlefield had quieted once again. But both Talai and Mason knew it was only for a short time. This war never rested for long. And now, something felt different in the air. Heavy, cold, as if the enemy was hiding something more than just weapons. Talai looked at Mason and pointed to the north. She had seen strange lights during the last fight. Not from the sky, but from underground. The enemy had a base nearby. It wasn't on any known map. It was hidden. And she believed something important was inside. Mason nodded. He trusted her instincts. They didn't speak the same language, but the way she moved, the way she watched, he knew she had seen something. And after what they had survived together, he was ready to follow. They moved carefully through the wreckage and smoke. The night helped hide their steps. Finally, they reached a part of the ground that looked wrong. The dirt was smoother, darker, and when Talai pressed her foot down, it gave a slight hollow sound. Beneath it was metal, a secret hatch. Talai knelt down and opened. A small panel with a tool from her belt. Wires, a security lock. Mason gently pushed her hand aside and took out a tiny device from his armor. One press. A soft click. The hatch popped open. Talai blinked in surprise. He had Earth tech, and it worked fast. She was beginning to see how dangerous humans could be. Not just with weapons, but with their minds. They climbed down into the darkness. The underground tunnel was long and narrow. Lights blinked on as they walked, as if sensing their presence. The air smelled of chemicals and metal. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Something about this place felt wrong. They reached a wide door at the end of the tunnel. Strange symbols were printed on the walls. Talai recognized the enemy's language. One word kept repeating, "Test." Mason typed something into a control pad. The door opened with a low hum. Inside was not what they expected. Rows of strange glass chambers stood along the walls. Inside each one, an alien. But not just any aliens, Talai's people. Some were children, some were unconscious. Some looked awake but weak. All were trapped. Talai's heart stopped. Her hand shook. These were not soldiers. They were prisoners. Taken alive. Used for something. Mason walked to a control screen. He pressed a few buttons, and files opened. Data, names, ages, scans, experiments. Talai moved beside him and saw something that froze her in place. Her name, Talai, subject. #87. Next to it, a picture of her face. A note, high resistance to pain, unique energy signature. Track and capture if possible. Terminate if resistant. Talai stepped back. Her hands balled into fists. They had been watching her, studying her. She was not just another warrior. She was a target, a test subject. She turned to Mason, anger in her eyes. Not at him, but at the truth. Her people were not just being killed in war. They were being collected. Like animals. Mason read more files. The enemy had been using advanced machines to study alien bodies. They wanted to create a new kind of soldier, stronger, faster, and without fear. They were using DNA from Tellies. Kind to do it. That's why this war never ended. It was never about land or power. It was about control. Tele walked to one of the glass chambers. A young girl, barely a teenager, was inside. Eyes closed, breathing shallow. Tele placed her hand on the glass. Then she heard it soft tapping from the inside. The girl was alive. Mason acted fast. He opened the chamber. The girl fell into Tele's arms, weak and shaking. She looked up with frightened eyes. Tele whispered softly to calm her, speaking in their language, telling her she was safe now. Mason opened more chambers. They rescued 3 more. 2 were still breathing. 1 was too far gone. Tele knelt beside the fallen one. A tear ran down her cheek. This wasn't just war anymore. This was horror. And she had almost become part of it. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang through the base. Red lights flashed. They had been found. Mason looked at her. No fear, just readiness. Tele wiped her face and stood. She was angry now. Not broken, not sad. Angry. The enemy had taken too much. They thought she was just a tool. A number. But now she had proof. And she had a human at her side. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for justice, for revenge. And for the children who never got the chance. Asterisk. Her strength is fading, so he carries her. The alarm kept ringing, loud and sharp, echoing through the underground base. Red lights flashed on the walls, and the air turned cold with panic. Footsteps could be heard above. The enemy was coming. Talleyrand stood tall, even though her legs felt weak. The rescued girl clung to her side. The others followed close behind. Mason moved quickly, checking exits on the screen. They had to leave now, but Tele was not the falla. Something was wrong. Her head spun, her vision blurred. Her body had been pushed too far. The last fight, the escape, and now this discovery, it had drained her. She had ignored her pain, but now it was catching up fast. She tried to walk, but stumbled. Mason caught her before she hit the floor. Tele looked up at him, breath shaking. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She tried to say, "Go without me," but the words never left her mouth. Mason didn't speak. He didn't argue. He simply lifted her into his arms. Her armor was heavy. Her body was limp. But to him, she was not a burden. She was the reason he came here. He looked at the children. His face was calm, but his eyes were firm. He would get them all out, even if it meant carrying them one by one. With Tele in his arms, Mason led the way. The children followed close behind. They moved through narrow tunnels and side paths, avoiding the main routes. Mason knew time was short. The enemy would block the exit soon. Tele's head rested against his chest. Her eyes opened for a moment. She saw the lights flashing above. She saw his face covered in sweat, dirt, and focus. She whispered, barely a sound, "Why me?" Mason didn't answer. Maybe he didn't understand her words. Or maybe he knew there was no need for words anymore. She had spent her life fighting alone. She had never asked for help. But now someone was holding her, protecting her. Not because she was powerful. Not because she was useful, but because she mattered. They reached a back hatch. Mason pressed his device to the control panel. It blinked red lock. He set Tele down gently against the wall. Then he took out a tool from his belt and began working. Fast, cutting through wires, sparks flew. The children held each other, scared but quiet. Talai wanted to move, to stand, to help, but her arms felt heavy. Her mind was tired. Still, she watched him, this strange human who had walked into her war and made it his own. With one final spark, the door clicked open. Cool night air rushed in. Mason turned, lifted Talai again, and led the group into the forest beyond the base. Behind them, alarm still screamed. Lights lit up the sky, but they kept running deeper into the trees, away from the enemy's eyes. After nearly an hour, they reached a small cave hidden between thick roots and rocks. Mason gently placed Talai down and helped the children inside. He gave them small food packs, water, and checked them for injuries. Talai opened her eyes again. She felt warmth now. A fire had been lit. Mason sat nearby, checking his rifle, always alert. "You stayed," she said softly. Mason looked at her. His voice was calm, but strong. "You needed someone." She blinked slowly, letting his words sink in. No one had ever said that to her. Not her commanders, not her allies, not even her own people. But this human, this stranger, had carried her through fire, past death, into safety. Not because he was ordered to, because he chose to. Talai tried to sit up. Mason helped her slowly. She winced but managed to lean against the cave wall. "What now?" she asked. Mason reached into his bag and pulled out a small transmitter. He adjusted it, then pressed a button. A light blinked. "Now we wait," he said. She looked at him, puzzled. "Wait for what?" He glanced at the sky, then back at her. "For help, for justice, for your people to know what really happened." Talai stared into the fire. The faces of the children reflected in the flames. She was no longer fighting for herself. She was fighting for them, for all who had been taken, for all who had no voice. And now she had someone beside her, not a soldier, a partner, and maybe, just maybe, a friend. Asterisk. They call for backup and no one answers. Asterisk. The fire crackled softly inside the hidden cave. Outside, the forest was quiet, but Talai knew the silence was only temporary. The enemy didn't stop. They would search all night if they had to. And this time, they wouldn't just be looking to kill. They'd be looking to erase the truth. Mason sat by the edge of the cave, eyes scanning the trees. His hand rested on his weapon, ready. He had sent a signal earlier, a coded request for emergency support. It should have been picked up by the Earth fleet in orbit. But minutes passed. Then hours. No reply. He adjusted the signal device again. Static. He changed the frequency. Still nothing. Talai watched him from across the fire. Her body still ached, but the warmth had returned to her skin. The children were asleep beside her, wrapped in blankets Mason had packed in his emergency gear. She had been trained never to show weakness, but seeing those children safe and Mason still trying to call for help made something soft move inside her. She asked gently, "No answer?" Mason shook his head. "They're not coming." Talai didn't understand every word, but she could read his face. That calm, serious look. The kind that came when plans failed. He sat down beside her and sighed. His voice was quiet now. "I think Earth Command shut down my signal. I broke protocol when I came here. They warned me. I came anyway." Talai tilted her head. He had known the risk and still came? She looked down at the device in his hand. It blinked red, searching. Still searching. Why would they ignore? "You?" she asked. Mason gave a tired smile. "Because helping people like you doesn't bring profit or power. It only brings problems." Talai nodded slowly. Her people had learned the same lesson. No one helped unless there was something to gain. And yet, here he was, still helping. She looked into the forest, shadows dancing between the trees. The enemy would come soon. She could feel it in her. Bones. The air was too still. We can't stay here, she whispered. No, Mason agreed. But if we move now, they'll find our trail. Talai closed her eyes, thinking. Her body still hadn't fully recovered, but her mind was sharp. The children couldn't run far. One of them had an injured leg. The youngest still cried in her sleep. They couldn't fight. They needed protection. She turned to Mason. We split up. Mason looked at her sharply. No. You take the children, she continued. I lead them away. He shook his head. Not happening. Talai's voice was firm. It's the only way. I know these forests. I can draw the enemy away. You're still hurt, he said. I'm not dead, she replied. They stared at each other for a long moment. Both knew the risks. Both hated the idea. Then Mason did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and took out a small silver badge. It was worn, scratched, but still clear. The symbol of Earth Special Forces. A badge of honor. He handed it to her. If you don't make it back, he said quietly, tell them I fought with you. Tell them why I stayed. Talai took the badge, fingers closing gently around it. You will make it, she said, because I'm going to guide them back to you. I'm not dying here. Mason finally gave a slow nod. They waited until the stars were high and the night was thick. Then they moved. Mason lifted the smallest child onto his back. The others followed quietly. Talai walked in the opposite direction, her steps light and fast. She left footprints on purpose, broke branches, made noise, anything to draw attention. It didn't take long. Soon, the sound of drones buzzed in the distance. Red lights moved through the trees. Talai ran faster, drawing them deeper into the woods. Her heart pounded. Her lungs burned. But she didn't stop because behind her was something more valuable than any weapon. Hope. She was no longer just a soldier. No longer just a target. She was a shield. A signal. A distraction. And a promise. Somewhere behind her, a human was risking everything for children who didn't even speak his language. And that was something worth fighting for, even if no one else answered their call. Even if the galaxy stayed silent, they still had each other. And that was enough. Asterisk, you're not alone anymore. The forest was burning behind her. The night sky lit up with red flashes as enemy drones followed her trail deeper into the trees. Talai didn't stop. She couldn't. Every second she bought gave the children a better chance. Every step kept Mason safe. Her legs were shaking. Her side bled from a fresh cut. But her spirit burned stronger than ever. She reached a clearing too open to hide, but too late to turn back. A spotlight from above hit her. The enemy had found her. They circled, weapons raised. Voices shouted commands, but Talai didn't lift her weapon. She just smiled, because she knew something they didn't. This time, she wasn't fighting to survive. She was fighting so they could. She threw a small device onto the ground. A blinding flash of light exploded upward. The enemy stumbled back, blinded. In that moment, she ran again through the smoke, over broken trees into the hills. She didn't need to win. She only needed to last. Far away, Mason and the children had reached a high ridge. They could see smoke rising in the distance. The oldest girl turned to him and asked, "Is she coming back?" Mason didn't answer right away. He looked down at the small tracking device in his hand. A blinking green dot still moving. "Still alive, she will," he said. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, covering the sky in orange and gold. The children huddled together for warmth. Mason stayed awake the whole time, eyes on the trees, listening for every sound. Then he saw a figure stumble through the brush. Talai. Her armor was torn. Her body scratched and bruised. But she was alive. The children ran to her first. They hugged her legs, held her hands. She smiled weakly, leaning on Mason as he stepped forward to catch her. "You came back," he said softly. She nodded. "I said I would." Mason helped her sit down. He handed her water, wrapped her wound, and sat beside her. For the first time, there was no need for weapons. No rush, just silence, peaceful, real. Talai looked at him, eyes tired but bright. "I thought I was born to fight alone." Mason looked at the children sleeping near the fire, then back at her. "You're not alone anymore." She held up the silver badge he had given her. "This ... It means something?" He smiled. "It means I chose to be here. It means I believe in you." Talai held the badge tight in her hand. She didn't know what the future would bring. Maybe her people would never understand. Maybe the war would go on. But something had changed. She had been a number on a list. A fa-fa-chud when something had changed. Subject in an experiment. A warrior forgotten by the galaxy. But now she was something else. She was proof that hope still lived. That even in the darkest places, light could find a way in. And that even the smallest act one human choosing to stay could change everything. Later that morning, a ship arrived. Not from Earth, not from her people, but a secret resistance group, aliens from many races, those who had also lost homes and families. They had heard Mason's signal. They had seen the battle. They came not as saviors, but as allies. Mason and Talai stood at the ramp, watching. The children walk inside the ship, safe, protected. The resistance leader looked at them both. "What are you two?" Talai smiled faintly. "We're what happens when you stop waiting for help and start being it." The leader nodded. "We could use people like you." Mason looked at Talai. She nodded once. Together, they stepped onto the ship. The war wasn't over, but this story, her story, had changed. Not with a victory, but with a choice. To stand beside someone. To fight not just for yourself, but for those who couldn't, and to remind the galaxy even one human can make all the difference.